Since 2016, the anglophone part of Cameroon has endured turmoil and violence. In October and November 2016, protests organized by lawyers, teachers, and students were dispersed by security forces with brutal force. According to Amnesty reports, over 20 people were killed on the spot and hundreds were arrested. The end of 2017 saw more protests and more security force clampdown on protesters. According to the reports, over 30 people were killed, and some who were injured had to flee hospital treatment because they were afraid of being arrested. By the end of 2017, Amnesty International has reported that there have been series of incommunicado detentions, arson attacks, and other human rights violations that were happening in southern Cameroon. Therefore, we call on the international community to take action. Alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much.
The Republic of Cameroon is a member of the United Nations. The country has ratified and acceded to several human rights treaties, such as the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which was acceded to in 1984, the first optional protocol to the ICCPR, allowing for individual complaints mechanism directly to the United Nations Human Rights Committee in 1984, and the Covenant Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment in 1986. The implications of these accessions is that under international law, Cameroon is bound by these treaties and must perform the obligations contained therein in good faith. This is the international law principle of Pacta sunt servanda, as provided for under Article 26 of the Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties 1969.
Equally, we urge the government of Cameroon to provide effective remedies to victims and so that all victims of human rights violations and abuses are granted reparation. Equally, we urge the government of Cameroon to also result to resolving the conflict in the southern part of the country through meaningful engagement so as to find lasting solutions to the crisis, that is promoting dialogue. Finally, as a principle, we urge the government of Cameroon to intervene and stop the human rights violations currently unfolding in the southern part of the country in the interest of peace. Everyone's rights matter. Let's preach peace.
Human rights violation in anglophone Cameroon is on the increase. The government has obviously failed in its responsibility to protect its citizens from grave human rights abuses. But must the African Union toe the same path of failure? In situations like this, the African Union has the responsibility to step in and protect the citizens from gross human rights violation. The responsibility to protect and the mechanism, that is, the peace and security architecture for implementation, must be called upon in order to bring lasting peace and resolve the carnage going on in southern Cameroon. People die every day. Nations cannot just fold their hands and watch. It is time for the African Union to step up its game and prove to the world that it has the capacity to apply African solutions to African problems. The human rights abuses, the crime against humanity going on in southern Cameroon must be stopped for the benefit of all.
In light of the urgency of the situation, the daily loss of lives, and the potential threat to international peace and security, we therefore call on the United Nations Secretary General and the United Nations Security Council to prevail on the government of Cameroon to stop the military operations and engage in dialogue with the English-speaking citizens of the country by appointing a special mediator to facilitate the negotiations for a permanent solution to the problems. We also call on all relevant United Nations human rights special procedures, particularly on the Working Group on Arbitrary Detention, the Working Group on Enforced or Involuntary Disappearances, the Special Rapporteur on Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman and Degrading Treatment or Punishment, the Special Rapporteur on extra-judicial, summary and arbitrary executions, and the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of the Internally Displaced Persons to undertake fact-finding country and investigative visits to Cameroon to bring an end to the incessant human rights violations on the anglophone part of Cameroon. Also, considering the history and persistence of the problem in Cameroon, we call on the United Nations to appoint a country-specific rapporteur for the Cameroon situation, that is, a special rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Cameroon. The United Nations Committee Against Torture should also undertake an inquiry of the situation in southern Cameroon, pursuant to Article 20 of the Convention Against Torture, with a view to bringing an end to the human rights violations. Where a state is seen to be unable or unwilling to protect its people from human rights violations, the international community has the responsibility to come in and protect the people. In order to prevent an escalation of the current situation in Cameroon into one of anarchy, chaos, and armed conflict that could threaten international peace and security, urgent action must be taken immediately to arrest the situation. Appropriate positive steps must be taken to ensure that the rights of the people of the English-speaking regions of Cameroon are respected, protected, and fulfilled, and the grievances resolved through constructive dialogue and other relevant political and legal avenues. As Martin Luther King Jr. rightly puts it, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.